Hello, beloveds. This is Dr. Hazel-Grace Yates, and I am joined here with Cosmo Means, who is a dear colleague. I feel so inspired and honored to have gotten to have the opportunity to work with on 4 Apollo retreats. And we're here today to talk to you about what is Apollo, and we're bringing it to Colorado in April 2023. And so I thought it'd be really great to hear it from the horse's mouth, or half of the horse's mouth anyway, from Cosmo, of what is Apollo, and how is it continuing to evolve, and how is it changing us as facilitators. So Cosmo, I want to just pass it to you and just share what is Apollo.
Sweet. Thanks, Dr. Hazel-Grace. It's so great to be here. It's so great to always connect with you, and I love working with you, and I'm excited to be on your, what is this, podcast, on your share? What are we doing here?
We're doing a video.
Just
We're
a
going to share
just a video.
a
Just doing
video
our video here.
conversation that we're recording.
So what is Apollo? That's a really great question. So I did some work with one of the other co-facilitators, and with his name is Ori Dehan, taking what Mehdi and Kasha and I created and really honing it down. And so I want to share that honed down version right now, because we really we put a lot of care into making sure that we could be precise with what we're presenting.
Yes.
And so just take this in. So Apollo is a journey. Okay. This is an immersive journey for men of feeling, honing, and claiming their desire. So allowing what exists in them as their desire to be a power that they learn to hone and claim and own and have it be a part of them. Okay, great, beautiful. So how do we do that? So we're bringing our desires out of the shadows, sort of like finding this gateway to each man's authentic self. And we do that through developing subtle, authentic attunement through embodiment practices and self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of the model of somatic sex education, of using embodiment as a way to learn about yourself, to learn about what you want, to learn about how to ask for it, to learn about the impact you have on the people around you when you do ask for it, and how to manage that. And doing it through slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of Apollo in a nutshell. And maybe the why is so that we can live a life of embodied truth, so that we can feel good in our bodies when we walk around in the world, when we exist as we are, as the men that we are.
Mm-hmm.
And Mehdi and I both have this really strong desire to learn and understand what men are, who they are, rather than imposing what we think men should be like. So we're really in this inquiry of what are men like in the world today? What are they going through? Do they have a platform to talk about and work through the challenges that they're facing in a place that's safe enough to say it out loud?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes the things that we're struggling with as men are not exactly socially acceptable to just sort of speak in every situation, in every container, with every group.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to have a place to workshop that stuff and be a little messy, a little imperfect, and human, really, just to be human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful, well said. And to sprinkle in, how am I as a female practitioner a part of the Apollo project, is that the men do the men's work, and then they get to work with a somatic sex educator, female practitioner, throughout the week, and then they go back to the men's group. And so that's why I'm a part of it, being a woman. And I want to say, Cosmo, one of the things that I feel safe and inspired and a yes to continuing and being a part of this project is it's not prescriptive or dogmatic, or this is how it is to be. a man, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
who are you? How can we support you in like you said, being more of your authentic self, whatever that is. And
Yeah.
yeah, creating the safe enough space, as you said, where people can actually share the things that they can say that share in the container, because there's a sense of safety there where there might not be in the world where the cultural scripts say don't say that or don't be that or don't
Yeah.
do those things. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And yeah, we have, I mean, our female practitioners are these very balanced representations of like harmony. So being an embodied human that has some balance of masculine and feminine can show up and heal some of the wounds that some of these men have towards their own masculine, towards their own feminine side.
Hmm.
And part of that is not necessarily encouraging them to be more manly, but them to be in more balance. And so when we have both male bodies and female bodied folks around, like as facilitators and practitioners that are um, modeling that balance,
Hmm.
that's important for them to feel from both us as the facilitators and you as the practitioners.
Totally.
And you do it so well.
Mm. Thanks, Cosmo. Well, I know that you know that I do it well, or you wouldn't ask me back, because you, Cosmo, are committed to like exquisite quality. If there's anything about you that's true, is that. So yeah, and I'm curious, you've mentioned Mehdi a couple times. He's a co-founder with you. And can you share what was the impetus? What was the seed of creation? Like, why did y'all create this?
Yeah, so the creation was like a bit of a flurry. So Kasha, who's my wife and is also a practitioner at the Apollo retreats, who you know, of course, but for those out there, um, Kasha came with this sort of idea, this seed of something to offer to men, and so reached out to Mehdi, and I was germinating on this thing, and so I kind of brought something to her, and she brought something to Mehdi, and then we brought it all together, and we were like, okay, what about an immersive experience for men where we can take all these skills? We had just finished our training as sexological body workers and somatic sex educators.
Mm-hmm.
Mehdi is a teacher, a mentor, has now become a very dear friend and obviously co-founder, co-facilitator. Um, and so we kind of paired up with one of our teachers who also had this just deep desire to find a safe space for men to do their work
Mm-hmm.
so that we could, um, yeah, kind of reconnect with brotherhood in a way too that we have often been isolated from. A lot of us feel isolated from as we separate into these kind of nuclear families or just loneliness or I'm going to do it all myself mentality. I'm going to take on the world, but it's got to be me. And I feel like once the men get into this little cocoon of brotherhood, they melt a little bit, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden we get to see who they actually are and what they
Mm-hmm.
actually want. And so we
Mm-hmm.
had a bit of a vision of like
Mm-hmm.
what it would be like to give men a space to melt into,
Mm-hmm.
to do this work of finding out and learning about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And really with the core belief that in doing that we could change the world. We
Mm-hmm.
could change, not that the men need to be fixed or changed, but that they could learn more about who they are and show up more in the world in this sort of authentic way. And in doing that, that would be the seed of change,
Mm-hmm.
is that they just, like myself on my journey, like Mehdi on his journey and Kasha on her journey, and probably you, I won't speak for you, but that when I tapped into the wisdom of this tuning fork that is this body, I'm able to move through the world and make decisions that are in integrity and be able to tell when I'm out because of the connection I have with my body. And so
Mm-hmm.
wanting to be able to give that um, space to practice, for men to practice learning their bodies and how their bodies can help um, guide them
Yeah.
through a complicated world, right? It's very complicated out there, and what's being expected of us and what we
Mm-hmm.
expect of ourselves and our parents expect. And so it's like, so who are we in this? And we're trying to do all these things for so many people in
Mm-hmm.
our lives. how do we find out what our truth is and how to
Mm-hmm.
sort of stand in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I noticed when you were talking about the men getting to melt in the cocoon, I saw two different images, and one was like the weight that they're carrying of
Mm,
holding up the
mhm,
pressure of like having it all together, and then also like the energy that it takes to hold up the masks too. And so when I saw the melt,
mhm.
I saw like putting down the backpack and then also like like lifting up the
Oh.
masks. And the yeah, it's just like, and as I say that, I notice like this sense of like energy and joy coming through of like the relief of
Mhm,
not having to do those things that the culture has indoctrinated us into. Yeah. So on that, I'm curious if you want to share, y'all have done 5 retreats at this point. I've been with you for
mhm.
4. What are some of the things that you have what are some of the themes that you've seen the men walk away with at the end of the journey?
Yeah, great question. So you talked about this melting, and the biggest thing that I notice is that we get to like find out who they are because they really don't know. So very often there are so many masks and so much weight of the expectation of who they're meant to be that they themselves don't actually know who they are. They
Mm.
don't know what their natural emergent self is. And so
Mhm.
when we can do, and I mean, it's interesting you mentioned masks because Medi is a psychotherapist that does work with art and play. And so we
Mhm.
do some masks work and have the men choose what they want to wear and when they take it off. And so we do these really neat sort of embodiment and art and play practices that help them actually explore those in sort of a literal way of like
Mhm.
taking off the mask as well as this, um, deeper level that's there as well. But some of the key things are, yeah, finding out more about who they truly are.
Mhm.
When they leave, they're reporting that they're able to interact with men differently.
Mm.
They're able to feel more comfortable connecting with men in a different way.
Mhm.
Sometimes, like asking simple questions that spark a different type of conversation that maybe is not so. Um, you talked about it. What's the first layer is
Oh, the 3 layers of
informational.
intimacy, it's the information level,
Yeah,
the emotional level, and then the relational level.
yeah. So
Mhm.
there, a lot of men are getting caught in informational conversations, and
Yeah.
so what we're finding is that they're leaving and they have some tools
Mhm.
to do what they're already longing for, which is to have deeper levels of conversation. They just didn't really often know how. And so that, 3 layers of intimacy conversation that you have is a great tool. It's a great example of something they actually report using in their lives. I
Mm.
also do this work with men that I call either the anatomy or the life cycle of desire.
Mhm.
And so one of the men reported very recently that going back into relationship with their partner, that, and I love this line, he said that now naming a desire is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one. And that was a really, really big moment for me of like, oh, this is a really big deal. And that just their level of depth of communication, that they have the capacity to go into something rather than just saying, I want this, and kind of like running away from the response, or just like, oh, if it impacts somebody negatively, just being like, don't worry about it, just I didn't mean that, like, but being
Mm.
able to stay with their desires and learn about them to the point where it's sort of like a maturation process of learning to work with what you desire and what you want for yourself. So
Mhm.
that's a big one. Brotherhood, um, learning to work with their desires, finding out who they truly are. um, and there's this piece around like having almost like a little bit of humor around how we're kind of propped up to be as men. There's a little, it's almost like they lead with like a little softness of like, oh yeah, this is, I mean, it can feel intense, but also just to bring a little like buoyancy to this,
Mm.
to the almost the absurdity of the human condition of how we like impose these qualities on men. And so they kind of leave almost like they've taken the blue pill from the Matrix, like they're like, you know, or the red pill or whichever pill will open them up. But they kind of like the illusion is popped a little bit. They see behind the veil a little bit
Yeah,
about like what's going on out there,
yeah.
and there's a confidence that emerges from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the last one that I'll mention now, because there's a lot, but is just confidence in learning how to ask for the type of touch that they want for their bodies.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like, huh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this, we're often very cock centric.
Mm-hmm.
And when given the opportunity to explore different sensations and understand different erogenous zones and ways to experience pleasure, they become more complex erotic beings. Let's just put it that way. They become more complex erotic beings because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's there's a lot more than, you know, my cock's great and there's a lot more than just my cock, or I don't have to worry so much about whether my cock's hard or not. I can experience pleasure with a soft cock and in other areas of my body, and I could just kind of
Mm-hmm.
relax a little bit, and again look behind the veil of just always having to like show up hard, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to experience pleasure and to be in your body and have fun. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a big one where they're just like, oh, like, oh yeah, this feels good, like, oh, my face. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I just want to be like held and pet, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I want to like be furious in my beast, but there's a lot of variables.
Right.
So they're not kind of caught in a rut of either I show up like this or I failed,
Or I won't get attention, or I won't get love, or I won't be
or
met.
I won't get attention, or I won't get love, or I won't. Yeah, exactly. That
Totally. Yeah,
there's more diversity.
mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I noticed myself wanting to answer, and then you said the thing, but what comes to my mind is what I see them getting is um there's a research done by Mahalik that identifies in our culture what makes a boy a boy. And there's
Mm-hmm.
this list of qualities, and that's like the man box, and it's like don't ask for help, be tough, have disdain for homophobia, um
Mm-hmm.
don't ask for help, all this stuff. And so it's like I see them coming in and like mostly being in this box that they were said that they have to be in. And when I see them
Mm-hmm.
come, they get to like inhabit, embody, explore the other possibilities, and how I see that showing up in their erotic expression, as you just said, the complex beings. And like they get to
Mm-hmm.
be soft, they get to be slow, they get to cry, they get to be express
Yeah.
their anger in a really safe way. They're like, sometimes like, yeah, it's fun because the sessions they're so unpredictable.
They're
And they can
so
be
unpredictable.
they're so unpredictable. And I, for whatever reason, I think it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of people when they hear about this event, they imagine what these sessions look like, and they imagine a lot of like erotic and just the whole time of just being very like cockcentric. And like you said, sometimes there's just a lot of holding, and
Yeah.
they haven't had the opportunity, they haven't had felt safe enough, they haven't felt supported, they haven't felt guided to be able to receive that expression of connection and in the erotic. So um
Yeah.
I'm noticing myself, yeah, getting inspired because I'm like flashing back from the sessions that I've done with the men. And I will say this also, as a sexological body worker, somatic sex educator, when I'm doing my sessions solo with my clients, they have extraordinary results. And
Mm-hmm.
the work that can happen in 6 days in this container when I work with the man, and then he gets caught by you or Medi or Ori,
Uh-huh.
and then they get caught by the men's group, and I'm just, like, getting emotional. It's like, what can happen in those 6 days? I could spend years working with someone and never quite get them
Yeah.
there, and so the sessions are just, like, so impactful and so integrated. I think that's the big part is they're so
Mm-hmm.
integrated that these are lifelong shifts. And yeah, so I just like, yeah, I'm feeling inspired and feeling the potency of this work and the honor really of getting to be with this
Mm.
team. Um, and I also, as a practitioner, also as a side, one of the things that I love being a part of the Apollo project is it's like this incubator. It's like this continuing education. It's like we're on this team
Mm-hmm.
that everybody wins and we're uplifting everyone and we're like, what did you do? And how did you do that? And like there's just like it's this mastermind that
Yeah.
I long for and I miss being a solo practitioner. And so, I'm inserting myself here of why I love Apollo and how inspired I am by it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Love that.
Um, okay, I'm
Yeah.
also recognizing we need to transition here soon, and
Okay.
I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to say here at the end.
Hmm. So 2023, we have a big year coming up. We in 2022 did Apollo retreats rather than the one we did the previous year, and then the one we did prior to COVID, and the three we tried to do during COVID and had to cancel. So that was troubling. But we had a really big year in 2022. We're doing it again in 2023. I'm super excited about it. We've brought on this new co-facilitator, Ori Dahan, who's going to be co-facilitating in Colorado again, as well as joining us in Mexico. So we have 3 retreats coming up, one in Colorado in April, one in BC, Canada in July, and then one in October in Mexico. They're all going to have slightly different themes. The one in July in Canada is a kink theme. The one in Mexico is a little bit of like ritual and mystery theme. That's going to be exciting. And then the big piece that we're really as a team kind of honing in on is integration in 2023. And so that's I've also been working as a male practitioner with the Back to the Body company, which is like a container similar to Apollo for women. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years, I've been with that company for about 6 years, and the big question for immersion retreats is like, okay, I've just like totally embodied so much in this 6 days. How do I integrate this and take it home? And so we're really looking at that piece of like, how do we support our men in creating this to be a long game lifestyle? And so that's our big um, exciting piece that we're looking at for 2023, which may look like um, so sort of like video content that's like an assembly of all the pieces that we teach at Apollo as
Mhm,
an integration package that people can take home and revisit and relook at and create their own daily practice out of some of the tools. That's
mhm,
sort of what I'm envisioning and we're in conversations about right now.
nice.
So 2023, big integration year,
Yep,
3 retreats, um, the first being in Colorado in April. I'm very excited. I'm very honored, and I'm
yeah.
happy to have gotten to talk about it this morning.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Cosmo.
Yeah,
Love you, appreciate you.
love you too.
Have a beautiful day.
Talk soon.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.